Brought to you by BedroomBattlefields.com, this is the Tabletop Miniature Hobby Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Tabletop Miniature Hobby Podcast. It's Matthew with you here for most of this episode. So I'm going to get straight into it with what I've painted recently, or what I'm painting. So the last couple of things that I've finished were both my 15mm command groups for my two fantasy armies that I'm building. I've got an Orc and Goblin army and a sort of human empire army. So I got musicians, standard bearers and generals from Ral Partha. And what I've done, I've kind of multi-based them. So both the human and the Orc force, there's 4 miniatures each on this multi-base. Like I say, standard bearer, a couple of musicians and a general. Very puerile names for them. I think it's is it High Marshal Dick Longfellow and Grabham Eyeballsack as the Orc guy. So there you go. That's me showing my age of 40. Like I was saying on the previous episode with Mark, giant toddler with a beard. So Grabham Eyeballsack. Eyeballsack is the second name, just in case I've not really rammed that home yet. So they're done. They're painted up. I'm quite happy with them, actually. I'm going to put a lot of links in the show notes throughout this episode because I've got photos of stuff, articles about stuff as well on the website at bedroombattlefields.com. They'll all be in the show notes, links to those. So check those out, please, if you're interested. The work's in progress at the moment. I'm noticing that I've made now significant progress in these two armies, like over the past year. I think I got them in August last year. So it was, as much as it's a smaller scale, it was intimidating seeing all that bare metal. There was just loads, and it was quite inconceivable that I would eventually work my way through them all, but I'm getting there now. I really am. I think there's only 6 regiments that are completely untouched at the moment, 6 units. And out of that, it's actually only 3 different kinds of miniature. There's human spearmen, there's goblin wolf riders, and there's orc archers. So, I'm hoping to hike on and maybe get it finished, before the sort of year anniversary of when I got the 2 armies. That would be a nice wee milestone. But again, I'm not going to be precious about that. It'll be done when it's done, sort of thing. But the work's in progress at the moment. I'm nearly finished up a small unit of human crossbowmen. I've also got some dwarven allies for the human players. Got them from Pendraken recently. Really nice wee miniatures. So a big block of those, dwarf spearmen, and goblin spearmen as well. A massive sort of horde of those. I can't remember where they were from. Possibly Pendraken as well. But so work my way through those, hoping to get them finished soon. And then it'll just be those remaining 6 regiments. But it's really just 3 different sets of miniatures because I've gone for a monopose aesthetic, which I think works especially well at this scale as well. So that's kind of what I'm working on at the moment, paint-wise. I do have some 15mm fantasy buildings to finish up painting too, but it's all pretty much 15mm at the moment, with the exception of one wee project that I was working on, which I'm going to talk about now, and that's my miniature war game in a tin project, a portable miniature war game in a very small tin. And this is an idea I'd been kind of toying with for a while. My daughter, she has this. It's a farmyard in a tin. So, it literally is as it sounds. A small tin that she could carry about with her. You could put it in her bag and stuff. And if we're out for dinner anywhere, sitting at a cafe or whatever, she could get this wee tin out and it opens up. It's got this wee felt, it's like a field, it's got a pond on it. There's wee wooden animals, wee wooden farmer, a tractor. And it got me thinking about, I wonder if you could make and I'm not saying this doesn't exist anywhere, it might for all I know, but if you could make like a miniature war game in a tin, but it wouldn't just be something that was, extremely dull and limited. It would still have to have variety. And I'm going to talk about my criteria for this in a second, but when I spoke to Mike Hutchinson about using a chessboard, that was kind of the next stage of this idea and got me actually working on a game as such. So I started off with a chessboard and I used 12 counters, so 2 split into 2 essentially warbands, conceptual warbands of 6 each, and these counters were numbered 1 to 6. So obviously a chessboard doesn't fit in a tin. I mean, I've managed now to create something that does fit in a tin, which I'm going to talk about. But looking at the game, the mechanics for a second, my kind of criteria here was minimal components, minimal dice rolling, no bookkeeping, a balance of luck and skill for the players, and infinite setup and scenario possibilities for the game as well. So the starting point being the chessboard as a kind of prototype here. The idea was to roll 2 dice. One is the action dice and one is the activation dice. So when you roll the activation dice, that number tells you which corresponding number in your warband you're going to activate. So you roll a 3, you've got a miniature with number 3 on it, and that's the miniature you're going to activate. And the action point dice tells you how many action points you've got. So it's obviously going to be up to 6. So that might mean move 3 and shoot within a range of 3. You could shoot another miniature, so you don't need to go directly up to them. You could shoot and move, or you could move straight up to them and take them, chess style. Replace them on the square and they're eliminated. So there's no saving rolls or anything like that. You could just, anyone who's in range of one of your miniatures that's activating, you could just kill them. You could just take them. And that's to kind of minimise all the dice rolling as well. So in order to try and balance this, because what could happen, you could quickly lose 3 of your party, 4 of your party, and defeat is a formality, or victory is a formality for the other player. So what I decided then to incorporate was, for each of your party that is eliminated, you're then going to get a +1 or a +2 or whatever to your action roll. So you'll still roll your activation dice, you'll still roll your action dice, but this time, say 3 of my guys are dead and I roll a 3, I'm actually going to have 6 action points. And the concept here is obviously it could be desperation, it could be fury or rage, but the less survivors you've got, the more powerful and more dangerous they're becoming. And there's this kind of tactical element of you might be trouncing the opposition, but you really have to start to think about spacing your own forces out, because basically if you're fighting a last man standing, he's exceptionally powerful. Like he could roll an 11 if he rolls a 6 plus the points for his 5 dead comrades. That's a very powerful character. He could wipe the floor with you if your guys are too closely packed around him. So again, that brings in a kind of light tactical element to the game as well, which is really cool. So again, the game's still taking place on a chessboard at the moment, and I was kind of making things more flexible and interesting by using little wooden blocks to just create terrain basically, and to make sure it wasn't just a big open room. So that brought in an extra dynamic to the game as well. Then I got myself some 10mm miniatures from Pendragon. That was when I made that order of my 15mm dwarfs. So they've got a really cool 10mm sci-fi range. And I got these guys and stuck them to, it was 15mm squared bases. And I started playing on a hex-based pad rather than a chessboard. And I was able to draw terrain, for lack of a better term. I was able to draw little walls and doorways and stuff. And that obviously made it really dynamic, but again, you can't fit an A4 hex-based graph pad in a tin. And the whole idea of this game was I really want to just get the whole thing in a tin. And when I say tin, I'm talking like they're called tobacco tins. That fit in the palm of your hand, so you don't have a lot of room at all here. So all the other components were obviously fitting in there by then. I cut out some felt, I got some felt and glued it to the inside of the tin to soften it up, and that makes it handy for rolling your 2 dice as well, especially if you're in a public place. If you're in a pub, you don't want to be rolling dice on the table every couple of minutes, or you'll be getting a sore face pretty soon, depending on where you're drinking. So I had everything in the tin bar the playing area, and the last piece in the puzzle here was I got it's like clear plastic graph template paper. I think, it's not really paper, it's plasticky material. I think it's commonly used by folks who do like textile work, sewing and dressmaking or fabric making, whatever it is. I'm not familiar with that whole world, but that was the shop that I got this in, and I was able to then cut it up into essentially dungeon tiles and make quite a lot of them. So I was then in a position to like have this little deck of cards, which again, that was everything now fitting nicely into the tin, and I could set up almost Space Hulk or Dungeon Saga tile dungeons or space stations. By the way, the game's called Space Savers because again, you're saving space because it's a game in a tin and it's set in space. Although it doesn't have to be. To be quite honest with you, you could use fantasy miniatures if you wanted as well. So that's where it is at the moment. The whole game fits nicely into a tin. I could take it about with me. Hopefully start to talk my daughter into playing it with me. And I dare say it'll still grow arms and legs yet. You know, I'll probably start to come up with more rules or tweaks to the existing rules and just keep working on it, I guess. But I did make a little demonstration video which I put on YouTube. So again, I'll link to that in the show notes, and if you're interested in this game or making a version for yourself, you'll get a look at it in action. You know, I've tried to demonstrate some of the combat and stuff like that. So yeah, Space Savers, a miniature war game in a tin, something I've been wanting to do for a while now, and I'm happy enough to have achieved that to a certain extent. So there you go. Our question of the month for June 2024 is, what hobby-related thing did you once own that you most wish you could get back? This could be anything from a Chaos Dwarf army book or original Hero Quest set to the first miniature that you ever painted. Also, what became of it? Did you sell it, give it away, lose it, or did your mum simply throw it out? Send your answers in by going to bedroombattlefields.com/voicemail, and I need them in by Friday the 28th of June. Alright, back to the show. So another thing that I'd been tinkering with recently was random event cards for solo or co-op rank and flank battle games. So this is kind of Rangers of Shadowdeep style random event cards, which I'm a huge fan of. I really like the flavour that they could bring to games, especially if you want to have a co-op game or a solo game. So I'd been thinking to myself, you know, we're building these 15mm armies, and I'm also very excited to get my hands on a copy of Hobgoblin when that's available. So I was thinking to myself, you know, if Robert and I wanted to maybe do a co-op game rather than battle each other with these armies, how might that work? So there's a cool idea in the Sci-Fi Skirmish Scenarios book that I've talked about enthusiastically in the past, and it's to do with the movement of troops coming towards you. You know, if you're basically playing the game rather than another human player, this is things like, you roll a d6, and for example here, you roll a 1, they panic and move backwards. You roll a 3, they move straight down the table. You roll a 6, they charge anyone within charge range. A number 5, they move down the table at 45 degrees left, etc, etc. So there's scope there for bringing in a randomness to your opposition troops when they're not being controlled by humans. That adds that bit of unpredictability as well, because if they're always following a very similar rule, you could kind of predict what's going to happen and which troops are going to be which troops in battle. And as a human player, you're often going to be able to outsmart any sort of game AI without an element of randomness in it. So to take that to a whole other level, here were some ideas for cards that you could draw at the end of each turn that are going to, you know, they might boost your forces, they might give you an advantage, but they might also cause chaos, they might hinder you in some way. So I'm just going to go through these now. So here's one card that's called Missing Orders. Confusion reigns as orders fail to reach a unit on the battlefield. Roll to determine which friendly unit is affected. This unit must miss its next turn and cannot move, attack, or perform any actions. If applicable to your game-specific system, it may still defend itself if it's been attacked. And you'll see here I've got game-specific system because I wanted these cards to be agnostic for any rule system that you're using. So we don't want to get into the minutiae of, take a morale check or take this test or whatever. I would like the opportunity for people to be able to use these, like I say, in any game system that they prefer. We have Frenzied Unit. One of your units becomes frenzied and uncontrollable, fighting with reckless abandon. Roll to determine which friendly unit is affected. The unit remains under your control but follows the AI system's action for the opposing army for the next 2 turns. So you can see here that you would have to give your regiments, your units, whatever, you'd have to assign a number to those for any time that you needed to roll to see who was affected. It probably helps too if you number the units of the opposition as well, because sometimes it might be them that's affected. So it's handy to know exactly who we're dealing with here when we draw one of these cards. Here's a bit of a silly one now. Blocked horn. The commander's musician's horn is blocked with mud, requiring immediate assistance. The nearest unengaged friendly unit to the command group must move towards the command unit and spend 1 turn in base contact, unable to perform any other actions until the next turn. So I like that about the old Games Workshop games and Warhammer and that. You always got this silly stuff, particularly when it pertained to like orcs and goblins. So I think you need some of that in there. And of course, the more serious player just doesn't need to include stuff like that if they would prefer not to. Ranged ambush. An unseen force launches a ranged attack from off the table. The unit in question suffers a ranged attack with damage determined by your game-specific system. We've got panic. Panic spreads through a unit, causing them to flee from the nearest enemy. This unit spends the next 2 turns moving directly away from the nearest enemy unit and cannot attack. Supply line shortage. A disruption in the supply line means no ammunition for ranged units. All friendly ranged units cannot fire this turn, but could still move and engage in melee combat. Animosity. Tensions flare between 2 friendly units, forcing them to stay apart. So you roll to determine which 2 friendly units are affected, and then these units must remain at, and the distance here will depend on the scale you're playing at, the rules, whatever, how many miniatures are on the table. I put 20 inches apart here, but you could obviously alter that as you see fit, and that is an effect that will stay in place for the rest of the game. Targeted. The enemy focuses all its efforts on a single unit. All enemy forces target this unit exclusively for the next 2 turns. Terrified horses. An unseen force terrifies all horses on the battlefield. All friendly cavalry units move in random directions this turn. Roll for each unit to determine their movement. Misinformation. False orders cause confusion, leading to a unified but misguided movement. All friendly units must move in the same randomly selected direction this turn, regardless of their current situation. Halted movement. The commander calls for an immediate halt to reassess the battle strategy due to new intelligence received. No friendly units may move this turn except those already under another effect. Units can still shoot and engage in combat. Inspired. A heroic deed or rallying cry inspires a unit to greater feats of strength. This unit receives a significant boost to its combat effectiveness for the remainder of the game. Enemy reinforcements. The most recently defeated enemy unit is restored to the table as reinforcements deployed at the enemy's table edge. Drunkenness. A unit is found drinking on duty, impairing their abilities. This unit's stats are reduced for the remainder of the game. At least they had a good time. Primary objective. A critical order is received to eliminate a specific enemy unit at all costs. Roll to determine which enemy unit is the target. This unit becomes the player's primary objective until it's defeated. Friendly reinforcements. The most recently defeated friendly unit returns to the battlefield. It's restored as reinforcements deployed at your own table edge. Impending doom. A report indicates enemy reinforcements are approaching from behind. All friendly units must now attempt to escape off a randomly determined edge of the table. Out of ammo, supplies run out and no more range attacks can be made. No friendly units can make range attacks for the rest of the game. They can still move and engage in melee combat. Out of water. A lack of water causes fatigue and low effectiveness. All friendly units suffer a reduction in their overall abilities or stats for the remainder of the game. Friendly fire. Confusion leads to a ranged unit accidentally opening fire upon allies. Roll to determine which friendly range unit is affected. This unit fires at the nearest friendly unit, causing damage as determined by your game-specific system. Old comrades. A soldier spots an old comrade among the enemy ranks, leading to an unexpected truce. Roll to determine which friendly unit and which enemy unit are affected. Both units refuse to fight one another for the remainder of the game and cannot engage in combat against one another. Corruption and betrayal. One of your units turns traitor, joining the enemy ranks. Roll to determine which friendly unit is affected. This unit immediately becomes an enemy and will be controlled by the AI system for the opposition for the remainder of the game. Offer of alliance. A cunning offer persuades an enemy unit to defect and fight for your cause. Roll to determine which enemy unit is affected. This unit immediately switches sides and becomes a friendly unit under your control for the remainder of the game. Scouting report. A scout brings vital information about enemy positions. You may reposition one friendly unit or gain a strategic advantage as determined by your game-specific system. I got one from Cam in our Discord community. This is a cool suggestion. The soldiers due. The army's pay has been in arrears for months. Anytime they defeat an enemy unit, they pause to loot the corpses. So after defeating an enemy unit, you roll a d6. On a 1 to 3, the victorious unit misses its next turn as it stops to thoroughly search the defeated unit for coins and valuables. They may defend themselves if attacked. On a 4 to 6, the defeated unit was well healed. The attacking unit gets double movement next turn as they rush forward to see if more loot is to be had. Next up is encirclement fear. Paranoia sets in as rumours of enemy reinforcements arriving from all sides spread through the ranks. All friendly units must group together and remain within 30 inches, again you could adjust relevant to your own game, of one another for the remainder of the game. Units outside this radius must move to join the group immediately. This excludes units already under another effect. Couple of fun ones to finish with. Stray Puppy. A stray puppy wanders onto the battlefield, causing a temporary ceasefire as everyone tries to ensure its safety. All combat ceases for this turn as units ensure the puppy's safety. No units can engage in melee or range attacks, but they can still manoeuvre. Combat is resumed once the puppy is safely out of sight. And the final one now, Discordant Melody. The enemy's musicians play a horrendously out of tune cover of Mustang Sally, disrupting your force's focus. All friendly range attacks must now be directed at the enemy command group until they are eliminated. Units without ranged attacks are not affected by this event. I suppose that's debatable, isn't it? It's not a very good song. So there you go, that's what I've been up to recently, making those cards. It could obviously be a random roll table as well if you're happy enough to roll one of these more than once. So again, links to everything mentioned in this episode are in the show notes, and you could check out the full post and read through them yourself if you would like to. So in other news, Robert and I got a game in. We used Titan as a setting, so I've been talking about this recently. You know, Saturn's biggest moon, Titan, just a really cool place to set your sci-fi games, especially if you go into the future. I'm kind of imagining this hydrocarbon industry. And, you know, it's at one point it's thriving, and then as these things do, it all breaks down and there's different factions going to war. And I kind of came up with, based on the miniatures that I had, I came up with some factions that we could use. The Ethane Frontier Corporation, one of the major players in the Titan hydrocarbon industry and the only company to survive the war. They fight to clear out or eliminate all other factions from the region. Typically, they use a mixture of androids and mercenary companies to do their fighting. We had the People's Government of Red Mars. This is because I've got, I think it's Conflict 47 Soviet power armoured troopers with like the hammer and sickle on the front, so I thought this would be quite a good idea. So the People's Government of Red Mars. Communist Mars has the biggest human population in the solar system, and the government will do anything in its power to secure Titan's hydrocarbon infrastructure and resources. So other factions we've got there, Titan's remaining human survivors. Millions of people still live on Titan, ranging from former industry workers and their families to criminal gangs and maddened cultists. And then creatures of space, from the Walking Dead to creatures of the warp. It isn't just humans fighting it out on Titan either. So that basically opens the whole thing up to any miniature you could possibly own. So Robert and I played out the battle for Kraken Coast Hydrocarbon Refinery. It was a fight between the Ethane Frontier Corporation. They had 3 androids and they had 4 mercenary troopers. And these are my kind of World War One looking guys with gas masks on. I called them the gas men, and the gas masks will come in handy on Titan as well. So they were fighting it out against the People's Government of Red Mars. So I had 3 of those heavy troopers, and I had some lighter infantry as well. So the 2 forces were well balanced, because the key here was to play out a scenario from the Sci-Fi Skirmish Scenarios book called Data Drip. And in Data Drip, you've basically got 6 different terminals on the tabletop. So I was using my battle systems terrain, so I set that all up. Again, I'll put links to photos in the show notes. So you've got these 6 different terminals spread out. And the idea is essentially to get up to one of those terminals and stick a USB drive in it, and there's going to be a data burst at the end of each turn, and it's about who collects the most data, basically. So we've started the game with 6 yellow D6 on the table, and those are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. That's the numbers of the terminal. And then each player had their own coloured D6, numbered 1 to 6. So if I get up to one of these terminals, and for lack of a better term, stick the USB drive in, I'll just swap that for a red or a blue die to indicate that, okay, this terminal is now under my control. And that could be overwritten by an opposition player. If he gets up to that terminal, he could either take it over himself, or he could destroy it. And at the end of each turn, you roll 3d6, and the numbers that come up here correspond to the random bursts of data on the various terminals. So if I roll a 1, a 2 and a 3, it's terminal 1, terminal 2 and terminal 3. Any of those under the player's control, they'll get a data burst, they'll get a data drop, essentially 1 point there. You could roll 1 twice. That means if anyone's controlling terminal 1, they'll get 2 points. But if one of the terminals under your control, if that comes up 3 times, so I'm under control of terminal 5, we roll the 3d6 and 3 5s come up, I do get the 3 points, but that terminal gets destroyed. It's just a really cool scenario in that book. It's a book packed with cool scenarios. And one more thing we did as well, we brought in a wandering monster. So we had a random creature on the tabletop as well. So that threw a spanner in the works, because this guy could get up to you and attack you as well. So that added in another wee bit of danger, another wee bit of flavour. He's like an undead spaceman. So I recorded a post-mortem with Robert. It literally was a post-mortem for me, because I got absolutely tanked. So let's cut to that now and hear a bit more about how the game panned out. So there we go, Robert. That was didn't quite go to plan, but we made the most of it in the end, didn't we?
We had a lot of fun, I would say.
So, early doors, I must have lost just like 3 or 4 guys pretty quickly within the first turn, I would think.
Yeah. When I say we had a lot of fun, I mean, I did.
Yeah, the Red Government of People's Mars.
People's Democratic Peaceful Republic of, therefore, yeah.
Yeah, I was the Ethane Frontier Corporation, so I had 3 androids and the gas men, who are a group of mercs. You had your 3 heavy troopers and your like ordinary troopers as well. So we both had like 3 heavies each, didn't we? And they were modified to +2 in their combat. Whereas the other guys were unmodified. And then we had Wandering Willie there, the skeleton. He was he had no range attack, but he could attack you within the short stick distance.
Yeah, the xenomorph just going around jumping on folk.
So he killed my first guy, and then you quickly got a couple of shots in. The way we had it set up, you could shoot from anywhere, couldn't you? So if you were out with the long stick, you were at -1. If you were within that long stick, you were unmodified, and so on and so forth. So the closer you got, the more chance you had of hitting. But a couple of long rangers for you took out a couple more of my guys. I actually got the USB drives into the data points early, didn't I?
You did. You were bold. You ran out there, and you had to step up quick. And it took a few, not risks, but long shots, quite literally, and paid off for me.
Aye, there were a couple of big rolls, like you got a 6 at one point and stuff like that. So, it quickly became apparent that I was just going to get decimated, and that is exactly what happened. So I ended up just with 1 wee guy cowering. I did technically finish with. I had 4 4 of the data points, you had 3, but of course, once all my guys were dead, that would have been irrelevant anyway.
Yeah.
So we decided to take a narrative turn after that, didn't we? You had 2 heavies left, and was it 4 of your standard troops?
Yeah.
And we decided, because the game was so quick, that we would just, build in a scenario that your heavy guys, your elite guys, have decided that the rest of this crew don't need to return home and tell anyone about this. So they turned against them.
Yeah. Crew expendable.
Yeah. So I got the first few cards out, didn't I? I got the first few shots away, but did nothing. The Wandering Monster, he killed another couple of my guys. I don't know how many guys he killed in total. It must have been like 6 or something.
I'm thinking 5 or 6, yeah, for sure.
So not bad going for somebody who just had an axe. But came down to the last. I think I had 1 guy left, you had 1 guy left, and the Wandering Monster was there. He's like an undead spaceman with an axe. So there was just 3 activation cards left in the deck. It was pretty important that my card came out first, because otherwise you were either going to have a shot at me or this guy was going to creep up behind me with his axe, and it was the latter that sealed it for me. So
he jumped you. Yeah, it was a space Mexican standoff and he got to go first.
So what was your thoughts? I mean, we do have a lot of terrain on the table, but you were kind of saying that we could have benefited from a bit more cover, couldn't we?
Yeah, because you could be moving for the data points, but doing it strategically and moving from cover to cover, as opposed to you darting out and then me just taking shot over open area. And while I had the disadvantage over a longer distance of, the -1 to whatever my guy's stat was, I had enough guys on the table that it was like, well, one of us is going to hit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened. So yeah, a bit more terrain. Other than that, I really like this.
The scenario is really good, actually, isn't it? Data Drip on the sci-fi scenarios book.
Yeah.
So I mean, it is a really fun scenario. I think because I tried to marry it in with this system of, there's, you could shoot from anywhere, there's no wounds. That was maybe just too much to properly enjoy the actual scenario itself. It just became a bit bloody very quickly. So
maybe a simplistic wound system. If you roll a 1 or a 2, it's 1 wound, 3, 4, 2 wounds, something like that, and you've got like 5 wounds, so 5 hit points or something like that. But again, you want to find that balance between how complex do you want it to be. We got through it pretty quickly, which is good because we don't have as much time as we normally would today because I've got to get away. So we got through the game maybe too quickly because I got lucky early on. So I would say a couple of modifications, maybe a bit of cover, and maybe think about other stuff, armor or whatever. We've done a few different systems now, but this is very close to being something I would play more than twice. Put it that way.
Aye, there's lots of potential with that scenario. There's obviously a load more scenarios in the book as well that I'd like to try out. But with this one, yeah, I mean, there's kind of 2 levels to the table, and all the data points were on the upstairs level, and you pretty much you were just a big target when you were up there. Pull a goat, say you've got a bullseye up your bum. So, aye, you were just if you were getting one of your armored troops up there, it was likely he would get the pen drive in the computer, but that's the last thing he was doing. So
yeah, and maybe the unmodified guys could have more movement, something like that.
To give them, a bit quicker, a bit more agile.
Because otherwise they're just the same as the heavies, but not as good anyway.
Aye.
I don't know. Again, you're looking at making it more complicated, but I really enjoyed the simplicity of just getting out there because there's some systems we've done where some of them have got special abilities, and you've got to keep, if you're new to it, you've got to keep going back and reading, magic shot and focus fire or, whatever it is. I can't remember now. Stealth and shadows and stuff. That's only really a problem the first couple of times till we get used to it. But this, it was like, okay, let's go. And it was, we were straight into it.
Aye. I mean, leaning more into scenario sometimes means that you pull back on the rules a wee bit. And it's just a trade-off. I think it's a trade-off worth making. Different if we say we played a game every week and you got really involved in the rules and stuff like that, and it was all second nature to you, then yeah, definitely you would maybe deploy that system instead. But
yeah, if we played this every week, it'd be like, okay, we need a bit more now. We need something more. We need to make it more interesting or whatever. But as the odd one off, this is perfect, just about.
Aye, well, I'll pick out a scenario in the book for next time, and we could get together again, and hopefully I'll put a better showing in next time.
Yeah, honestly, get some xenomorph models in. We need to do that because the layout of the base and all that, it just it screams Aliens to me quite a lot. Which, one of my favourite films. So maybe I'm biased, but food for thought.
All right, coming towards the end of the episode, last couple of wee things just, I suppose, worth mentioning. I picked up a copy of Space Weirdos. I got Sword Weirdos as well. So I bought the PDFs on, I think it's Drive-Thru RPG, and then went to my old pals at Print My PDF and got them printed out together. And I also had a PDF I'd been meaning to get printed for a while. This came up in the Discord a while ago. I can't exactly remember who pointed it out to me first, but it's scenarios from Warhammer Skirmish and Mordheim converted to Song of Blades and Heroes. So I got that printed out too. That's a brilliant book. Like, I've not really looked at Sword and Space Weirdos just yet. Obviously will do that soon. But the scenarios in there are great, and the author or authors have done a really good job to kind of adapt them to Song of Blades and Heroes. But they would work for pretty much any skirmish setting as well. So those are giving me lots of ideas. I'm only maybe 15% through the book already, but really, really enjoying that one. So yeah, that's been floating about in the Discord if you're wanting to get a copy of that yourself. So last thing to mention is just the question of the month for June 2024, if you're listening at time of recording. And that question is, what hobby-related thing did you once own that you most wish you could get back? And also, what became of it? So I've only got a couple in so far. I really need some more if we're going to create an episode around this topic. I need them in before Friday, the 28th of June. So please do get your clips in. You could do that by going to bedroombattlefields.com/voicemail, or you could record it on your phone and email me at hello@bedroombattlefields.com. So once again, what hobby-related thing did you once own that you most wish you could get back? And also, what became of it? And I really do enjoy those voice feedback episodes, so I'm hoping that we get enough to create an episode around this question too. Alright, that's it for this episode of the Tabletop Miniature Hobby Podcast. Links to everything mentioned today you'll find in the show notes, or you could hop on over to bedroombattlefields.com as well. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll speak again on the next one.